Thoughts?
I just, did you all? Hello, my name is Anne Marie Newman, and I am here today with two dynamic leaders from Wellspring Living here in Atlanta, Georgia. Today on Infinite Humanitarians, we hope to create a little bit more of a bridge between what's being done right now and the hopes and dreams of many who are looking forward to becoming humanitarians and developing projects. So first, I'd like to introduce both Amanda Heaney, who has been involved with Wellspring Living for, I think, about 15 years. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi.
And Christian Murphy, who I believe is the CEO. Is that correct?
That's right. Happy to be here. Good
She,
morning.
she is the CEO of Wellspring Living. And Wellspring Living has been transforming lives for 23 years. And I'm going to let these ladies tell us a little bit more about that. So if Christian, if you would start and kind of just jump right in, not so much of your history, but what do your programs do and why do they do them?
Absolutely. So being in this work for more than 20 years means we've kind of been in there since the beginning, right? In many different ways, there wasn't quite language or the right terminology for the issue that we're talking about today, known as sex trafficking. But as things have moved and progressed, Wellspring Living has been there, continuing to learn and continue to grow and teach others. And so the way that we do our work is focused really on three key areas: housing, healing, and education. We know that in order to be removed from tragic circumstances or challenges, having a safe place to go is really top key, right? As we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's at the
Yeah,
bottom and
yeah.
has to be fulfilled in order to go to the next level. And so housing is really key. And we have a girls residential program that serves youth for 9 to 13 months. We also have a crisis stabilization center for youth of all genders called the Receiving Hope Center. Our flagship program, the one that started it all, was the women's residential program, which serves up to 15 adults at a time. And then we also have bridge transitional apartments because we know that often women and children need a safe place to go as they move into the next phase of life. As we think of healing, we know that you can have a safe place, but if you don't get to the real root trauma of what you've experienced or what may have brought you into the life or other circumstances, then your ability to grow and move beyond it can be really challenging if it's at all possible. And so healing and therapeutic care continue to be a key part of our resources. So everything from our residential programs to even our community-based program that helps with workforce development, make sure that we offer wraparound services, including therapy, sometimes twice a week for individual therapy as well as family therapy that is available. And then finally, you heard me say education is really key. We know that helps to build the future that you so rightfully deserve. And so our youth programs have partnerships with the local county schools. And so our youth participate in virtual education, and our adults can participate in our Women's Academy, which is that community-based program. It does everything from helping you to earn your GED to having a paid apprenticeship and building the resume and the future you so rightfully deserve. So housing, healing, and education is how we do our work.
Wow, that is really fantastic. And is all of this going on in Georgia, in the Georgia area?
That's right. The one thing I would say is that we have several sites across Greater Atlanta. We're really grateful to have multiple properties to help us to maintain the anonymity of our locations and those that we serve. But then we also do work outside the state of Georgia when it comes to training and mentorship. Our training institute has been around for more than a decade and has been taking the great things that we have learned as an organization and as a team and helping other organizations and people who are interested in doing this work across the country to learn from those opportunities and to guide them along the journey.
Well, that's really incredible to have such an open source platform to share your 23 years of experience. That is, I hope that people who are feeling called to start programs, either whether it's Georgia or all across the country, tap into that with you all. How do they connect with you to get some support if they're going to start a program that has to do with fighting human trafficking or exploitation?
Yeah, you can go to our website, www.wellspringliving.org, and you can click on our Wellspring Living Training Institute. It has a breadth and depth, lots of breadth and depth of resources that we make available, even including, of course, basic FAQs, but also to how to get aligned with someone on our team to talk about mentorship.
Right. Well, before we go to Amanda, I want to ask you one more question, Christian. On your website, I also noticed that there is a resale shop. And if you can tell, I think that that has to do with some fundraising. If you could share a little bit about that, because I think that's also a way for maybe people to become engaged with you all right off the bat.
Absolutely. So our resale stores, we have two, one that's in Peachtree City and the other that's in Duluth. They have really helped us close to since the beginning of our founding to really fund the work that we do. And so we take everything from clothing to shoes to furniture, and books as well. And we take those things and what is not going to be used at our programs, we turn that around and sell it to the community. And those things, actually, our Peachtree City location just celebrated its 20th anniversary. And it's been a
Wow.
wonderful way to make sure that people are aware of the issue of sex trafficking, but also feel like there's something easy and tangible that they can do to be a part of the solution. So we're really proud
Right.
of our resale teams, the volunteers to help them to come to life each and every day. And it's a powerful and simple way to support our mission.
Well, if you're in Georgia and have an opportunity to go help out at one of those resale shops, that might be a great way to become part of the community and find some other like minded people who are all supporting Wellspring Living. I know also, besides that, you just completed a really significant capital campaign. Is that correct?
Actually, we're almost to the very end. We had to adjust goal just like many other nonprofits. Things continue to kind of go up in cost each and every year. And though our original goal was 20 million, we've modified it to 25.3 million, to make sure that
Okay.
we are doing everything that we can to have all the initial upfront costs, as well as plan for the years of ongoing maintenance and support and team changes that we have to do to support this capital campaign. This Welcome Home campaign will help us to nearly double the amount of people that we're able to serve on an annual basis. It's a significant undertaking of an organization like ours and our first major capital campaign. We are actually at $23.2 million, so $2 million away from our goal, and
Okay.
really hoping to close that gap by the end of this year.
Oh, well, that sounds fantastic. That is really great. And how many people do you serve right now on an annual basis?
Absolutely. So it just depends. I'd say we are on track to surpass the 180 participants that we served last year. What we found is that often a participant may want to go from one program to the next in order to increase or enhance their experience or services and healing, of course. And so, for
Right.
example, a youth might be in our crisis stabilization center at the Receiving Hope Center, but need long-term care. And so same thing for our women's residential program. They may need services at our women's academy, workforce development. And so though we served about 230 participants overall last year, those unique number of individuals was 181. So we're excited
That's
to keep growing to about 200 people a year.
that's fantastic. I'm sorry that there has to be that many people, but thank you for being there to support them. So, Amanda, I'm going to ask you a few questions now.
Okay.
I know a little bit about your story. Amanda has been involved for, I believe, 15 years with Wellspring Living. And I think that that's really remarkable. There's many people out there, including myself, that are still learning a lot about human trafficking and exploitation of not just women, but men as well and children. And we've seen a lot more of it in the news, the mainstream media, and alternative news as well. And so, being a trailblazer, I would love for you to share a little bit about how you engaged and found Wellspring Living 15 years ago.
So I had heard of human trafficking, sex trafficking. At the time, I thought it was like a Thailand problem. I had a friend from high school that was a missionary in Thailand working in that, helping those in that industry over there. And my husband and I were invited to a Wellspring fundraiser by someone that he knew through work. Um, and now that I'm thinking about it, it's over 15 years because I know I wasn't pregnant yet and my son is almost 15. So we went to a fundraiser. So I think for like a lot of people, they're invited by someone in their network to become a part of it. And for us, it was such an eye-opening experience. We went to an event on the Georgia Tech campus, and one of the speakers was being awarded what they called at the time the Butterfly Award. And it was someone that had gone through the program and was truly flourishing in life. And the woman that spoke was so well spoken and articulate. And I looked at her, and she was just a few years older than me. She had a college education. She was married to someone in law enforcement and had young children of her own. And she was a graduate of the women's program. And she, shared her story of how her path to into addiction and out of addiction led to where she is today. But it
Right.
put a totally different face on who we are serving and who this organization serves. And it really made me realize, wow, this is something that is not so far outside of my own community. This is someone that I could see myself raising my children with, going to the same preschool, being in the same community, doing life with. So it really kind of took, I guess, what I would consider a stigma of who we were serving away, and realizing, humanizing these stories.
Right. Wow, that's incredible. And then after you attended the event, what was kind of your next steps? How did you become engaged with them as a volunteer, as an advocate, and then later a board member?
Well, I would say that the next few years, the steps were baby steps towards, jumping in, but we certainly had a heart now for the cause. And my husband and we were recently graduated from college ourselves at the time, and he had this fraternity party every year where they would roast a pig, and it was a band party. And so he decided, like, we were going to do this at our house in Atlanta to carry the tradition on. And we were just a little too old to just be partying for the heck of it. So we're like, okay, we're going to do this, but we're going to party with a purpose. And we decided to make that event a fundraiser. And it was just, a backyard. It was a big bash, but we invited all of our friends, and it wasn't like a ticketed event. We just let them know we're doing this. We would love, whether you give $5 or $500, any amount is greatly appreciated by this organization. So we did that for a few years. And eventually Mary Francis, who is the founder of Wellspring Living, invited us, both Matt and I, to become a part of the board. And at that point, we did have some relationships with another board member, Loretta Zimmerman, who is thankfully one of our board members that does have that longevity on the board. So the board has members like me that have rolled off and moved on to other things, but we do still have some of our early board members that have that institutional knowledge to share and give that perspective to the board as well. So she was already on the board, and we knew they were doing great things. And she would even come to those events and kind of speak to our friends in between the band sets. So we were familiar with that too. She's just an amazing human being, and anything she's involved in, you want to be a part of too. So I think just the way you get involved is you find it, you have a connection, someone shares about it, and you realize, wow, I want to make a difference like this person is making too.
Yeah, that's great. And so now, since you've rolled off the board, you're still, though, very active, right?
Not as active as I once was, but I can never fully step away, because it is truly an organization that we see is transforming lives, and you can't just step away from that once you've been a part of it. So at this point, my volunteering looks more like helping out with the women's residential program when they have a graduation. I usually like to be the one to sign up for the decorations or the plates or bringing cake or being involved in that way. One of my very favorite holiday traditions is getting to wrap the gifts for the women's residential program. So before 2020, we used to go to the home and wrap in the basement. And since then, I sort of made it a social thing at my house where the gifts are delivered here. I invite a group of my friends to be a part of it, and we wrap presents, and it's kind of like our own little Christmas party as we're doing it. And we've kind of stuck with that just because it's worked and we enjoy it. And then they come back and they take the gifts all pretty to be delivered to the girls. And this year we're adding to that and doing a 12 days of Christmas for them, where my friends are adding to the gifts and not just wrapping them, which is really fun.
That's
Mhm.
that's awesome.
And then there's always a way to be involved. In the last couple years, my husband and I have invested in some rental properties in Blue Ridge, and we're going to be able to host the leadership team at one of them in November. And so, you know, while it doesn't look like it did when we were board member, our interest and investment and ability to support the organization looks different in different stages of life. We're still excited that we can be a part of it, just in different ways now.
Yeah. Amanda, thank you for sharing that, because I think for some people who haven't maybe had time to get involved with their passion project, or they're raising a family or they're working a job or two, you've really shared a beautiful legacy of how you have engaged. And then as your life has changed and your time commitment has changed, you've still continued to give on so many different levels. So thank you for sharing that. And I encourage, again, anyone that's listening that would like to become involved, it sounds like there are so many opportunities. So, if there's the capital campaign that's still in need of another $2 million and you have $2 million, I'm sure that Christian would be delighted to speak with you. If you have other gifts that can go to the resale shop or many other areas, I hope that people will continue to look at how can you engage today? How can you take the compassion you have now and turn it into action? Because I think that's what the two of you are really exemplifying today. With that speaking, Christian, I'd like to go back to you and ask you a little bit more about your staff. I believe that I don't want to misspeak, or I think I know about what your annual budget is. Is that something that you can share or that you keep private? Because I want people to understand the magnitude and the variety. Again, I think there's a spot for everyone at Wellspring to engage. And like we've talked about, whether it's $1 million or wrapping gifts, it's all important and it all matters. But I'd like to just drill down a little bit more on how do you manage to take care of that many people who have probably a big variety of needs, as well as maybe some complex needs. What does your staffing look like?
Yeah, so our information, our financials are public information, and so you can always visit our website to find that information, or any other kind of nonprofit resource such as GuideStar will also have that available. So our budget is about $11 million. We have
Annually, right?
That's right. We have about 120 or so staff, full-time and part-time, recognizing that our residential programs, particularly for youth, have to have 24/7 awake staff. And so that means
Wow.
whether it's, 3 shifts of 8 hours or 2 shifts at 12 hours each, it's really important that we are awake throughout the day, because we have to make sure that our participants have the right educational resources, but in the evening as well, because that's when, of course, some of those moments that have been most frightening to them are triggered at the nighttime. And so when I think about our staff and the things that we do to make sure that they are well resourced to provide support for survivors, it's one, making sure that they're well, right? And so we have a resource that we use called Navati that makes sure that we offer unlimited therapeutic resources, virtual therapy for our team members as well as others in their family. On that website, they can also have access to things like financial coaching as well as nutrition. And because we know that people bring their whole selves to work, we want to make sure that we're addressing the multifaceted needs that they may experience on any given basis, on any daily basis. We also make sure that our team go through what we call collective fundamentals, which make sure that they understand like common language we use at Wellspring Living, how to be trauma informed, and as well as strength based, making sure that when we're talking to someone particular, let's just say that there might be a youth that might be experiencing a trigger or frustration, being able to say, Amanda, I hear that you really want to be heard right now. You're using your words very intentionally to make sure that we're paying attention. I wonder if that we might have a conversation and maybe isolate ourselves so I can get to know a little bit more about what you might need from me right now. So as opposed to saying, stop screaming, stop yelling, how do we really address and really talk to people calmly and help them to use their strengths in a way that helps them to get what they need and what they're looking for? Um, and then I'd also say one of the things that's just really critical for our staff is having access to ongoing education. And so whether it's in our programs that look for ongoing learning opportunities for our staff, or our senior leadership that finds other opportunities, whether it's conferences or other kind of on-site direct care coaching, those
Right.
types of things are really important. So we're always keeping an eye open for what might be the right resources for our team.
Wow, that's incredible. What actually is trauma informed? You use that word. What does actually that mean?
Yeah, it means understanding that the people that we serve have experienced trauma, and it makes sure that we're not thinking about just the what's wrong with you to maybe what happened to you, right? And so
Right.
understanding that we're coming from a lens of if every human has likely experienced some form of trauma, how are you really approaching them with the right lens, care, resources, and the interest to make sure that you're supporting them in what they are trying to accomplish?
Wow, that's incredible. Is it correct? I believe at Amanda's house, I attended something that she hosted. There was a dynamic young lady who was talking about living in a tiny house
Yeah.
that she had, I guess, graduated to a certain point. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that progression?
Sure, sure. We actually just ended an MOU with a church in Ackworth where we did have tiny homes for women and children, and that's actually the basis for part of our capital campaign is bringing those tiny homes on site. What we found is that it's really important to have access to public transportation. It's hard when you're outside of Metro Atlanta to have access to those types of resources, and so
Right,
bringing it onto our property, it will be really helpful. And so we'll have 2 and 3 bedroom tiny homes. And as you and probably other listeners know, it's not only important for sustainability, but also creating a safe space. When people have either couch surfed or not have a place of their own, it's hard to really think about the future when you're just going to, what do I need today? And so we really hope that by having tiny homes and ongoing and staff to support those individuals, that we're really coaching them, helping them to
right,
learn how to practice paying a nominal rent. Right now, our participants who live in our transitional apartments pay something like $250 a month, but also coaching them around financial literacy to save. We have a housing
right,
navigator that's a part of these programs that's really meant to help them and say, what are you looking for? What do you need when you leave from Wellspring? And how do we make sure we're thinking about that point today and not tomorrow so that we know what are the steps that we need to accomplish and the things that we need to acquire in order to get to that place. And so we're really excited about tiny homes. I've not only always just been a little obsessed with them because I think that they're wonderful and really I think the way of the future, but also I
right,
think that they're a great way for people to be reunified with their children and to have the right place to heal and to have the resources that they need.
right. I'd like to ask you, Christian, a little bit about the statistics.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar nationally as well as locally, but in Georgia, can you share a little bit about the exploitation that goes on in general, and then also maybe how that looks nationally, and then maybe bring it down to how do people, women come to you or girls?
Sure. So I will say one of the things I think is really important is to understand the reason why trafficking is as popular as it is it's a very lucrative business. And globally, there's estimated more than $236 billion that is made through sex trafficking across the
$236 billion.
Right. And it's been really hard to get that number for the US alone, and in particular in the state of Georgia. But what I do know is that often, and I think what's most important for me to articulate here is that traffickers are not looking to necessarily kidnap someone, right? We have seen the movie Taken, and I think that so much of that movie has kind of gotten to our minds about what it looks like. It's be aware of the scary white van that's pulling up beside you or in the grocery store parking lot. But it's less that traffickers are really know how to prey on vulnerabilities. They're looking for people who are experiencing a crisis in housing, who have family members that are in poverty, or that have a home that has mental health issues, or have experienced some type of other abuse, whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, etc. And so they really are, for lack of better words, really grooming an individual to come into the life under the auspices of love, unfortunately, under the auspices I care and I will help to protect you from those things, and taking them from one danger into the next. And that is, I think, an unfortunate reality that is not only true here in Georgia, but across our country. And so when I think about this issue, I think also that the realistic stats are that about the average age of someone entering their life is only 14 years old. I have a daughter
Wow.
who's 14, who's in the ninth grade, and we know the brain isn't fully developed until you're in your mid-20s. And so that's a startling reality that I think that many people kind of struggle to hear, but it's a really important one because, as Amanda said, this is not the issue that's happening over there. It's happening in our zip codes, in our communities, in our schools, and it's often, unfortunately, very unseen too.
Right.
Trafficking and familial trafficking continues to be a big part of this, why this issue happens. Understanding that not every family has the same, I guess, priorities or values in mind, but really understanding that some people often come to life by someone who is either in their family or close to their family is also a
Wow.
startling reality. And the final thing I'd say is that there's an estimated 100 children that are being sold for sex every night across the state of Georgia. And when we think about that happening in our state, I think we're really proud to have a first lady and a governor who are so passionate about this issue and who are saying, how do we make it how do we make it clear that trafficking is not something that we want in our state, that traffickers will be prosecuted as well as buyers as well?
Wow. Wow. It's hard to imagine, really hard to imagine. But thank you for the work that you're doing. It's really so how do you um, come upon people that you take to your program and help out? How do you identify? I guess it'd be how do you identify them? Or do the police work with you? Or how does that, how do people come to you?
Absolutely. And thanks for bringing me back to that question. I think
Sure.
we do have great partners that are in law enforcement, whether it's victims advocates that are in sheriff's offices or the attorney general's office. They are very aware of the resources that are available to them in the community. We also have great partners such as the Department of Family and Children Services. About 70% on any given year of the youth that we serve are children that have been in the foster care system. And so that means that they are in the custody of the state, and those caseworkers are often looking for the right place to support their healing and to support their growth. And so that's a big place of referral. And I think also one thing that people might be surprised about is that often word of mouth for adults. So when someone has gone through our Women's Academy or had an experience at our tiny homes or any other program, when they're connecting with others in their community, whether it's their church, their place of work, they're happy to share what has been something that's been really helpful for them. And so word of mouth has also been an amazing resource for us as well. But we do have admissions counselors who really make sure that we are also being thoughtful about how do we make sure we're talking and introducing our work to other new partners, as well as making sure that we have the right tools and resources available to continue to just bring others closer to our mission.
Right. Right. Well, now I'm going to go backwards a little bit. And if either of you or both of you want to share a little bit about how this actually started. I know that the founder has recently retired and you have just moved beautifully on. I know sometimes there can be challenges when you have a founder for a long time. It can be called actually founder syndrome. And some organizations really, find a little bit of a loss, but from what I've heard is you all just really prepared for it well and made it just seamless. And I share this because again, for people who are thinking about starting their own programs, or whether it's in with exploitation or anything else, creating a legacy of 23 years doesn't just happen overnight. And I know that it's taken a lot of people. So if you could just share a little bit about the 23 or so years ago, how this all began.
Yeah. I can share, and Amanda, I'm sure you can have some other things to add
Sure.
as well. When I think about Mary Frances, I mean, I instantly smile. She is truly one of a kind. She's a woman with great faith and determination, and was a retired kindergarten teacher when she was helping to create a women's convention that was free and accessible to the public, to really help talk about what do women need in our community in order to be safe and in order to consider being close to thriving. And so while she was putting together resources for that and really coming to learn a little bit more about the city of Atlanta and what are some of the things that women face on a daily basis, she came face to face with this issue of trafficking. And after the experience was hosted, she said, we got to do something more about it. We can't just let this momentum stop here. And though she hoped that someone would create a special home for women in need, she happened to be that special someone. And so what first started off as a place for 5 women at a time through a home, I think that that's what she first and quickly realized, is that a home cannot be enough. A home is 4 walls. It's great. It's important to have great volunteers and people who are supportive. But how do you help people to move from one place to the next? And that's how we moved into those other 2 pillars of healing and education. And I think when I think of what it takes to start an organization like Wellspring Living, I think that it takes great vision. It takes a community, understanding that you can never do this work alone. The work that we have with great allies within and outside of our state is a really powerful one. And it takes the ability to tell a story in a way that people understand. People like Amanda and her husband and their family can be a part of this movement and really activating the community in a thoughtful way. And so I think about grit, determination, and faith when I think about those things. And I think really understanding it. What's the saying? It's like, we can go further together, is I think the true heart of Wellspring Living, and understanding that and living that out on a daily basis is key. But Amanda, I'm curious if you have anything else you'd love to add.
I mean, you definitely told the story well. I think it's important to realize that Mary Frances didn't have this background in nonprofit organizations. Like she was just a regular woman like you and me, but realized there was a need and that allowed that little stirring in her heart become something big. She didn't just let it go or say, oh, that's so sad. She said, I'm going to make a difference. And I think what's really cool about her story is that she completely devoted so many years of her life to this mission, and her husband and family came right alongside her and supported that too. But you can't do it alone, and it requires the investment of those that do have financial resources, whether they may not have the time, but you've got to have the people with the financial resources to help those with the vision carry it out. You've got to have Shirley Franklin was the mayor, I think, at the time of Atlanta, and there was nothing like this in Atlanta. And she was like, oh my gosh, we've got, how can I support you to do this work? Because it's so important, so needed. And so you really do need the community to back you too. And then you have to find the other passionate volunteers. And I love how Christian said, she brought family into the picture. And it's true. I mean, I remember when my kids were probably like 5 and 7 years old, and it was time to transition some of the apartments on the girls' campus into a transitional living apartments. We were there cleaning up after the construction, scrubbing toilets, wiping countertops down, getting that ready. The last graduation, my daughter went with me. She went with me to pick out the supplies, and she went with me to decorate. And, so you really can, no matter the age or the income or, whatever you have to give, you can give at any stage of your life. And that looks different throughout your life. So I would just encourage, you know, if this is something that interests you, there is a way for you to be involved, whether that's cleaning out your closet and donating, the items to the Wellspring Living store, volunteering with a program. And sometimes that means with participants, and a lot of the time that means, in the background. But there's so many important roles that make this organization work. So I really
Well,
want you to find what works
yeah,
for you.
thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, what advice would you have for someone, and I'll open it up to both of you, but who is thinking about they want to become involved, or they feel like they live maybe out on the West Coast and there isn't anything like Wellspring? What advice would you give them about starting an organization or becoming involved in one that is in their area?
Yeah.
I mean, how would they even find one, I guess is what I'm saying, is that some people, they would really like to engage. And I know we can like look on the internet, but like what other ways can they really just start to find out what's in their area and how they can help?
Absolutely. I feel like Giving Tuesday is coming up. It's a great way to learn about organizations in your area and getting to know what are the issues that are affecting people. I do think, of course, the internet is sometimes the wild, wild west, and it can be a great place. But I think it's really, to Amanda's point, going to conversations and experiences where people are talking about this issue. January will be here before we know it. It's Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And it's a lovely opportunity to really lean in and see what are things that are happening in my community and ways that I can be a part of learning more about this topic. And I think the first part to me is learning, and whether if this is removing the veil from your eyes today, what a great time for you to start looking into what you can do to be a part of the solution. I think when I also think about ways to be involved with Wellspring, we have a couple of different things that I think come to mind. So, of course, social media is available and very accessible, and so you can follow us to find out about more events. We have these things called talks at the table that happen on Thursdays, and those are live streams so that people can be able to tune into those and learn more about the issue of trafficking and maybe something very specific about a way to be a part of being an advocate, as well as volunteering, right? So we did talk about volunteering and how great that can be. We always also have monthly volunteer sessions where we talk about the work that we do around Wellspring and the different ways that people can volunteer. And all that information is available on our website as well, so that people can go by and see what's the session that I can attend and how can I jump in to help.
Would you like to share the website information?
Yeah, so if you visit wellspringliving.org and then you go to volunteer, that will give that information right over to you.
Okay, great.
And can I add, you had
Sure.
asked about the education and how to learn more about if you want to almost, I don't know, replicate Wellspring or do a small part of the work in your own city. Historically, Wellspring was one of the only ones that did the work that we do. But there was a time in Christian, you can talk about what it looks like now, where we called it the Wellspring Institute. And the intention was not to have little well springs all around the country, but it really was to educate people from around the country, around the world, as to these best practices that we had kind of figured out over time, and kind of share our model and what we've learned so that they can go and bring that to their own communities. And I think that is also part of what the campaign was, to be able to have a space where we could bring people on campus to see the work firsthand and train them there. And I'll let you take it from there. But I do think that that's a really important part of the work that Wellspring does, because that's what takes it beyond our city.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Amanda. That's great.
Yeah, and
Christian?
that training institute is the one that we talked about earlier that's been doing this for about 10 years. That's also the team that does our talks at the table. And so they really are trying to find ways, how do we bring this more to life to people in ongoing conversations so that we're not keeping it to ourselves. Well, there are lots of nonprofit organizations in every community. And I really believe in sharing resources as opposed to hoarding them for yourself. And so I really believe that the work that our institute is doing, not only in our area, but other communities, is really vital to long-term success. We'll actually be in Chicago next week, helping to bring the community together to think about what are the issues that are plaguing them, what gaps do they need filled, and is there any way that we can help advise or consult? We always have, I think, more in our community than we may realize. And so often I wonder that when people want to start something, if they visit, go spend time, go experience another mission coming to life so they can see and feel what it looks like. Sometimes that organization might need the extra hand. It might need the extra mind and creativity to really think outside the box as opposed to creating their own mission. But I do think that if you are interested, we do everything from consulting about how to create a board to how to staff your team to ongoing training
Wow.
and things like that that can really help you to be successful.
Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. So thank you both for spending this time together and sharing your vast knowledge and leadership. And to anyone that's listening, I hope that this has been helpful. And if you have been planning a humanitarian project or have been talking about creating a little bit more time to go and help, if you are in the Atlanta area, I hope that you think of Wellspring Living. I also know from being on their website, they have a lot of different virtual ways that you can give. I believe there's an Amazon wish list. Is that still out there?
That's right. Amazon wish
Okay.
list. I mean, like all the great things happen at Amazon. So we try to keep it as up-to-date as possible, not just for
Right.
the holidays, but throughout the year as well.
Right, right. The need is 365 days. So yes, please check out their website, wellspringliving.org. And I hope that they're, just this 23 years of experience can help anyone, no matter where they are in the path, or if you know someone that is struggling with this, here in Atlanta, Wellspring can help them. And just really keep learning and engaging, because when compassion turns into action, we are all so much better off. So thank you again. And for those that are wondering about when the next Infinite Humanitarian podcast will happen, we're hoping to do one more again later this week with another organization. So thank you for joining us today, and take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stop.